All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name's Joe, and I'll be walking you through PolicyStat here today. Just a brief overview on the topics we're going to cover. First off, we're just going to go through some of the basics of how to search and find content in the system, how the content is organized, and some different features you have of just how to access that content. Just so you all see the perspective from the general staff user about how they're accessing information in here. From there, we're going to go behind the scenes and look at the document review process. So how documents are sent for approval, how you can edit and review them and collaborate on them, and the different tools you have available to help you do so. From there, we'll follow up that with a few other tools and talk about our Learning Center, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. All right. Okay, so right here from the get-go, this is just the main landing page for general staff members, and the quickest way to find any active or approved content in the system is to use the main search bar. Some of you may be familiar with this if you've logged in yet or had access to it, but you can go ahead and do a search here, and let's say we're looking for code blue, and as you type, it's going to refine your search results. So a little bit on that. There's no longer really any keywords here. Each word in every document, the entire body of the document, every word is a keyword. So if I'm looking up the procedure versus something else, we can go ahead and select that. So you'll get a drop down in your search results. If you wanted to see all of them, you could hit enter or search, but right from here, you could select one and go ahead and view that content. So a document in PolicyStat will have a heading up at the top here. This will show all the corresponding dates that go along with the document. So I can see, when it was approved last and that kind of information. I can also see who the owner is of that information and what area it's in. You'll also have a table of contents on the left-hand side that allows you to jump to specific sections if I wanted to do so. So especially for longer documents, you may need to jump around and go right to those specific sections in there. For staff members that would like a copy or have a printer-friendly version, they could select printer-friendly. I went a little fast there. Printer-friendly is up here at the top in the right-hand corner above every document. And what will happen is that it will open up a PDF, well, it should open up a PDF of that document here. We are not in your real site. We are in a training version of that, so it may not be playing nice today and want to generate. Key takeaways for the printer-friendly version. Let me look at a different policy and see if that'll matter. It will have a copy watermark on the document, and it will also have a retrieval date on here. So the main thing is that we want to make sure your staff are accessing the most recent version of that document. So it will have the copy watermark there and a retrieval date. So if you're updating your content in the system, you want to make sure staff are actually searching for it and finding it so they see, your most up-to-date version here. All right, other ways to search and find content. You've got a couple other tabs here. You could search by area if you wanted to. So I could bring up, all the documents in EOC if I wanted to. So I could select that. I double click to select it, or multiple areas. Let's do EOC and food and nutrition just for fun here. And I'll hit search and it's going to bring up everything in those areas. All right. Now, if you ever wanted to run reports and get a list of certain documents that meet certain criteria, your area tab is a good way to do that. You'll have a small Excel icon up at the top. This will generate a report for you. So if you'd like to see everything in a spreadsheet, you could do that as well. It'll generate that and you could download it. That report will have every piece of data that we track about a document. So there's actually a lot more information in a report than you would just see here on the site itself. Other tabs, you have an owner tab. So for those of you today that own documents, you could go in here and find yourself. There's actually a quick shortcut link to do that as well. You also have a references tab. So if you wanted to search by a specific term or something of that nature as well, you could do that. Now, for you all, when you actually log in and access the site, it will take you to what's called the Home tab. Now, when you log in, it'll recognize what roles and responsibilities you have in the system, and it will allow you to go ahead and see anything that should be displayed to remind you if you have anything to accomplish here within the system. So in our case today, I went ahead and logged in as an example user, and I made some of their documents due for review. So we're going to walk them through that process today. Now, again, the Home tab is customized just for you. It recognizes what you may need to do in here, your roles and responsibilities. And up in the top right-hand corner, however, though, there is a notifications link. So you would receive email notifications if there's anything for you to complete within the system. All right, so you don't have to log in to know if something needs to be completed. You would get notified about it. And when you log in, you can even see the different items that you may have been notified about previously. So I don't have any in here, but the key thing here is that this notifications page is for your own reference. If you'd like to look at a list of things that you needed to complete, you can do that in your notifications section. You also see the settings for your notification here as well. Now, the main items on your Home tab will have to deal with the policy review process. So a little bit of background on that. The content from your previous system was converted into PolicyStat, and along with it came the dates, so the approval dates. So if something was in a 3-year review process and it was halfway through that, it's at that point in time, it is still at that point in time right now. This is a training version on your site, but even looking at your live site, I didn't see very many documents. I mean, just a handful, if that actually needed to be reviewed. So everything seemed to be in good shape. But moving forward in time, your documents will eventually need to be reviewed. And what will happen is you'll be made aware of that. Starting 3 months out, so 90 days out, it will begin to make you aware of anything that will be due for review. It'll do it once a month. So again, at 60, again at 30, and then eventually it would be past its due date, which at that point it'll just keep reminding you. But just wanted to point out, it'll begin reminding you about your documents. If you own documents in here, that starting 90 days out, it'll email you and let you know that, hey, you can get started on these ahead of time so they don't become due for review. So we're going to take a couple of these documents and walk them through this process. We're going to collaborate and make changes on them. But real quick, let's look at a quick overview of what that process is going to look like. So let's say I do have a document that's due for review in here, or maybe I'm creating a new policy as well. What I would do is I could go in and make any changes. I do that right in PolicyStat. I make the edits in PolicyStat, and then I would append that content for approval. So now it's kind of officially in the approval process here. And it's pending approval in what we call an approval workflow. Some departments will have several steps that a document would flow through in order to be approved. So basically, it's the individuals in the approval process are those who require, to have their signature on there for that department. Some departments may only have a step or two, maybe it's just the owner mainly approving it. But in this example here, I've got a 3-step process, and during this time, you can continue to edit and collaborate on the document. So you can invite others, maybe another department manager, content expert, if you wanted to get their opinion on the review. Now, you could also go ahead and basically at any point in time continue to edit it, but when you do that, it will send it back to the first step. So if you're the owner, it's going to send it back to that first step in the approval process as well. As it flows through this process, if there's more than one step, it's going to document who approved it and when. So it also provides that documentation for you if you ever need to show that this was properly approved at a certain point in time. When it completes the approval process, it would then be fully approved and then active or effective on the site, meaning that now staff can actually go in, search, and find this new version of the document. So previously, they may not have been able to see this if it was new, or if it's an existing policy, they would have continued to find the older version of the document, but now they can see the new active version. Now, all of your older versions are automatically archived for you. So, you can always go back in time and look at the older versions. PolicyStat will save those for you. You can even see the changes that have taken place over time. It's also going to reset the dates for you. So in your header for your documents in here, it's going to reset, give you a new effective date and give you a new next approval date as well. So it's handling all of the documentation and dates just with the goal of allowing you to simply focus on the content, making changes to the content. All right. So let's go ahead. I kind of borrowed someone's account in here, and I took some of their documents that were not due for review, and I changed their dates on here. So in the future, this is what you may see. You've got documents that are showing up here, and they're already past due. They're past their due date. In order to get this started, I've only got 3 in here, but I could click on them and start editing them right away if I wanted to. For those of you that may see more come up, that will be due for review. You could also click on the policies due for review link here. I could select that, and that'll give me a full list. So if you've got, dozens in here, this is a good way to prioritize which ones you'd like to start working on. So I see my documents in here. Again, I could click on the title and start working on each one of these, or I could even use these checkboxes on the left-hand side. This is allowing me to select them and pend them for approval. All right, so I'm going to do all of them in here. I'm going to select all and hit Start Approval Process for these 3 policies. So I've made my selection. I'm just going to do them all and hit Start. So the system is going to make a new pending version of these and send them into an approval workflow. Now, if I go back to my Home tab, I no longer have any policies that are due for review. They've left that stage, and now they're officially under review. They're in the approval process, and as the owner, I'm also the person that's going to approve them. Now, again, you have somewhat of you have another management page in here, policies requiring your approval. And this allows you to see, all right, what documents do I have in here to approve? I could jump right in and edit them as well. I continue to edit during this point in time. I could go in and view them if I needed to. Or another option is if they are unchanged, and this is the only, if they are unchanged, no changes made to them, you can bulk approve them. So I could quickly approve all 3 of these if I wanted to as well. So if you're familiar with the content, you're familiar with that there's no need to change them, you can go ahead and very quickly approve them in the system. However, if it is new or it's been revised, there are changes to it, you do need to go in and view that content in that case. That way, the system can ensure that the required approvers did indeed actually go in and view this content in here. Now, in general, what I would suggest is you go in and you click on the title, and the title allows you to see that pending version, and there's a couple other things that go along with it. So starting up at the top here, there is the pending document down below. We've got our downtime policy here. But starting up at the top on a pending document, the first thing you'll see that's different is a timeline. This timeline allows you to see the major actions that have taken place with the document. And you can click and select and move this around if you wanted to see what those changes have been over time. All right. Beneath that, you'll see that there is an option that says Edit Effective Date, as well as the approval workflow. Now, we've got a very short and simple approval workflow here. It's just the owner who we are impersonating here right now. So just a singular step here. It's not going to flow on to any other more formal approval step at this point. For the effective date, I just want to point out that there is an option for you to make a change here. And there is a difference between an approval date, if I can get it right here, an approval date and an effective date. The difference is that the approved date is when the document finishes the approval workflow. The effective date is when you choose to make it effective to staff members and they can see it. So for example, we could approve a document today, but choose to make it effective tomorrow if we wanted to. So if you ever needed to do that, you could do so in here. By default, I'm guessing, almost all of the time you probably don't need to change that. So the default setting is that a document is made effective upon its approval. So when I approve it, it's automatically effective. So if you don't change anything, that's what will happen. So that's why it says effective upon approval. All right. If you ever needed to change that, you could simply click Edit Effective Date. You could set a delay period or a specific date off in the future where you want that document to become effective. All right, so pretty simple there. If that ever comes up, common cases would be, if that department's not ready to perform a certain thing, but you wanted to get it out there ahead of time or create it ahead of time, or you need to show possibly an educational period. For those of you approving content, you'll see an approval button both at the top and the bottom of the document. So you can go in and view the content and you can approve it. Now, the approval signatures will automatically be listed at the last section of the actual body of the document here. So underneath the attachments, you'll see that it will automatically record those individuals approving the content. Now, if I continue to scroll down here, I've got the history section of a document. Now, the history section is where I can comment and collaborate on a document. So collaborating is where you can invite others who have an account in PolicyStat that may not necessarily be a part of the approval workflow. Maybe they're not an approver, but you'd like to get their input or allow them to see this document that we're working on here. So let's go ahead and leave a comment here. So I've made my comment, and then down below it says invite a user or group. All right, so I could go ahead and put my cursor there and do a search, and it's going to allow me to select from the individuals that have accounts in the system here. You can do multiple people as well. So if you just wanted to get others input in here, you could do so. Now what will happen is if I go down here and I click add comment, it's going to send these individuals an email, and that email would include what my comment was as well as a link to this pending document. That link will allow them to now view the document, view the changes, and comment back to me. It is not granting them any sort of editing permission. They can't go in and make changes to the document. It's just viewing and commenting if you invite someone to collaborate. All right, so I go ahead and click add comment, and it's going to go off and send them an email here. Now the comments are saved as a part of the history, and while the history is not available to a general staff member, it's kind of hidden in the background for those involved in the review, it is still permanent, so keep that in mind. Some things may be better off in a normal email. We can't change anything in the history for you. Now, you do have a short window in time to edit your comment. There's a small pencil icon on the right-hand side. If you see that there, you could select edit and edit your comment, but after 15 minutes, it would be permanent in the history section. All right, so that's how you can collaborate on a document. Again, so it's a good way to automatically send out emails for you, especially to others that you would just like to get their input on, with changes on a document. All right, so if we scroll back up here, for your documents that you're involved with, you'll also have an edit button. So at any point in time during this process, I could have been editing the document here, But let's say I got some feedback from our collaboration, and now I want to go in and make some changes. So I can select Edit, and that'll take us to our editing window. So moving forward, you'd actually be making changes to the document right here in PolicyStat. So you'd be editing the content. So a couple things, you'll wind up on the policy content page here. This is where you actually edit the body of the document. However, you also have a properties page. This allows me to see the criteria that correspond to the document. So I can see what area it's in, what workflow it's going through, and also the review period as well. For the content page, you'll start off with the title up at the top. And beneath that, you'll have the attachments tool. So if there's any files or images that go along, or forms that go along with a document, feel free to upload those from your computer. And it's a quick way to allow staff to have access to that information. They can easily click and download those files. Beneath that, we'll have the body of the document that will have a toolbar that scrolls with you. So the editing section here, it corresponds with all the same key commands that you're used to in Microsoft Word. So you can put your cursor in here, hit enter, and start editing away, and add in or change anything you may need to. Key differences here, you can see that the text is separated out into sections. So there's lines between them. Those are visual guidelines to show you where formatting begins and ends. So if I wanted to change the formatting of text within a certain box, I could put my cursor in here, and let's say I wanted to make this a heading. I could go ahead and select heading, and it's going to bump that up to the size, the appropriate size for a heading. If I wanted to change it back, I could go ahead and do so. And again, it's only changing the text that's actually in this section here. All right. The other thing is that there's no fun and fancy formatting. Unfortunately, it's all Arial font, and then you have your different sizes to choose from. But you still have your standard styles to pick. So if you needed to change the styles of certain text, you've got your toolbar here, bold, italicized, underline, all that fun stuff that you're used to. It's in your toolbar. So the next time you go in, you can, the most important button in here is the undo button, right? So you can always undo anything that you're changing. So feel free to kind of see what these different tools do. You can insert images and tables, special characters, anything you may need, find and replace as well. A couple other items, though, to specifically review would be an ordered list, as we see here. Just wanted to show you the gray bar is just, again, a visual guideline for the formatting. If you wanted to indent something from your ordered list, you could go ahead and use Tab or Shift Tab. Same commands as in Word. But there's also indent and outdent buttons in your toolbar as well. If you hit Enter within an ordered list, you'll get a new line item. So I hit Enter. Now I've got a B in here. If you wanted to change the style of your ordered list, let's switch it around. How about we make the outer level numerical? I could just leave my cursor here somewhere in the outer level of this multi-level list. Select numerical, and it'll update that for me. Now let's make our inner level here. Let's make that lowercase alphabetical just for fun. So I've been leaving my cursor here and selecting a new style, and it updates it for me. All right, another thing to mention is hyperlinking. Now that your documents are, within a web-based system, you can hyperlink back and forth to different documents. So for example, in our downtime policy, if I wanted to reference something about materials management in here, let's say I wanted to go ahead and reference another policy, I could go ahead and do a search for that policy. And in my browser, the URL is now something that I could link someone directly to this document in here. So I could go ahead and right-click and copy this URL. And now in the policy I was editing, I could make a hyperlink to that. So you've got a hyperlink button in your toolbar. Now, the main thing here is just saving your staff time. If you're already mentioning a document within, a current policy in here, why not just go ahead and link your staff member directly to it? That's our thought process on this, just to save your staff time if they're jumping from one thing to another. So I'll go ahead and create a hyperlink in here, and now I've got a hyperlink to that materials management policy in here. Okay. Now, at any point in time when you're editing, down in the lower left-hand corner, you have a preview button. So obviously the editor looks a little bit different than the actual policies themselves because you're seeing some of the formatting. But if I hit preview, this now allows me to see the document with my changes. And I can also click show changes if I wanted to. And it's going to show me everything that was changed within that document. All right. So it also shows the formatting changes as well. So your preview, again, editing is going to show you what it would look like for staff members. Now, when you're done making changes, you can go ahead and down at the bottom here, you'll need to put in a summary of changes comment. So this comment will be included in administrative reports. So they can, admins will be able to run reports to see what was changed in a given time period. And these are specific types of comments that will be included in those reports. So they're a little bit different than just a normal comment here. So you do want to provide some good information. So a quick sentence or two as to what was changed and why. You don't need a novel, but what I'm putting in here, this is a example of a bad summary of changes comment. All right. So again, quick sentence or two, summary of changes, what was changed and why. All right, now if you are the only person that is going to approve it, it will recognize that and it wants to save me some time here. I can go ahead and it's showing me I'm about ready to mark my approval right from here as well. I've got a box checked. It's saying, you're ready to mark your approval. Now, typically, that's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and mark your approval within the system. And since I was the only person that was going to approve it, that's what we would do. And I would be done with this. For today's purposes, let's say I wanted to collaborate on it more. I'm not sure if I was ready just to make it available to staff. I'll go ahead and uncheck that box and click restart approval process. Now I'm really just doing that because I wanted to show you some other things in here. So I've got my document in here. As you can see, the timeline is updated. So I can see we sent it for approval. We've edited the document. We've also collaborated on it down below. But now anyone else involved in collaborating, or maybe say there were more steps in this approval process, they would go in here and, I'm looking at a pending document. Now they can see my changes and even show the marked up version as well. So they could continue to collaborate on it if they wanted to. All right, so I've got my option to approve. Let me go over one more thing before we make our approval. For all of your documents that either you own or you're involved with, you'll be able to see an All Versions button in the top right-hand corner. So now I could go ahead and click on the All Versions button. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and see the older versions of content that may have existed previously. All right, so I could see that there's currently an active version that's out there for staff members. And then we've also got a pending version that we are currently working on and about to approve. Now, when I go ahead and make a change, it's going to go ahead and update that, and our pending version will now be active in the system. So for example here, let's go ahead and approve our policy. We'll go ahead and click approve. We'll leave you a space to leave a comment, but it's not required or anything. But I can go ahead and approve my content in here. All right, so now we went ahead and approved that, and we're down to 2 documents waiting for me to approve. So we took a document that was due for review. We went ahead and collaborated on it, pended it for approval, made changes to it. Now we've approved it. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the document here. Hopefully I'm bringing up the right one. Yeah, it should have been in Central Supply here. Now we can see last approved 8/2019. So this is our new version, has our changes in here that we made. And you can see that we approved it here. So our approval signatures are listed down below. Another item to mention is now when we look at our All Versions button, you can go ahead and select All Versions. And we can see the previous version is now marked as old, and the one that was pending is now active. It is the new active version out here ready for approval. All right, so we've fully walked it through that process. All right, so just a few other things to mention. Some of you are going to be involved with, a larger group of documents as they go through this approval process. So there is a link out here for policy management, and it's called Pending Approval. This will show you, everything that you're involved with as it goes through the approval process. So even if you're not the person that's supposed to approve it, if it's your document, this link allows you to manage everything and see where everything's at. So if I click on that, we're not going to have a lot in here today. There are only 2 documents, but let's say there were 24 in here and they'd gone off to subsequent steps. This is a key thing. You just want to remember that you've got a quick way to see all of your documents that are pending for approval and where they're at and who needs to approve them. So if you're waiting on someone else, you'd be able to see that in the needed approver section and the step description. So you can kind of reach out and bug people if they're not approving your content. You also have a duplicates link. If there's any duplicates, there's a tool out there. So if there's anything that you're involved with and it thinks there may be a duplicate, it'll automatically detect that for you. And there's also a My Policies link. When you go ahead and log in, you'll have a My Policies link here. And if you just wanted to see everything that's active that you're involved with, you can go ahead and view that as well. So it automatically takes you to those search results for your documents. So if you haven't been in here yet, that'd be a good thing to check. Make sure you have everything in here and everything matches up with what you expected. All right, just a few other things, and we can open it up for questions and other topics. If you have, run into any issues with functional items with when you're working in here, feel free to reach out to us. We've got a support team that's ready to help. I would say the quickest way to contact them is you've got a help icon in the top right-hand corner. You can go ahead and select that, and that'll take you to our Learning Center. All right, so our Learning Center will have our support contact information up here. So feel free to give them a call, shoot them an email. I'd be happy to help or walk you through anything you may be working on. So if you're trying to approve something or edit something, it'll have, they can walk you through that. And we also have a step-by-step guide for basically any item that you may be trying to complete within the system. There'll be both a video and a guide that walks you through each step of that process in here. So you can also feel free to search for articles where all of that information is documented for you. All right, so at this point, let's go ahead and we can open it up for questions, or Jeff or Susan, if there's anything else specifically you'd like to review, we can go ahead and start there as well.
So when you hyperlink a policy, does the system track like the number of other policies that are linked together? And if the policy is approved or changed, does that link stay the same?
Great question. So you will not need to update your hyperlinks. I forgot to mention that. If you link to a document, the link itself will never go bad, even if that document gets updated. It will always point the user to the latest version of this document. So you don't need to update your hyperlinks. The other piece to that is the system doesn't automatically keep track of which documents are hyperlinked to each other. However, our support staff, we do have the ability to run a hyperlink report if you wanted to see, which documents have hyperlinks within them down the road.
I wasn't able to tell on the screen, are we able to do flowcharts in policy?
So typically it's a text-based document, but you can insert images in here if you need to. Any type of, JPEG or PNG file as an image, when you're editing, you could insert that into the body of a document. So maybe I would suggest maybe creating it in PowerPoint, saving it as an image file, or you could attach a PowerPoint to a document if you'd like to as well.
That was my next question, is it's a good attachment. I have one more. Procedurally, if we have 4 or 5 people working on a document or working on a policy and doing edits, passing things back and forth, will we pretty much do what we've done before and work in Word documents and then upload a final draft? Or, did I understand it right, that we can't have multiple editors in the policy?
Well, within PolicyStat, I would recommend editing it right here. Within PolicyStat, you can have, different people editing a document. If you're doing that, it'll show you who's working on a draft at that time. But I would recommend making the changes right in PolicyStat to begin with and leveraging those collaboration tools to assist in the editing and approving process.
She was wanting clarification on whether or not there could be multiple editors that are changing the draft policy instead of just using comments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you can have multiple people that are, have editing capabilities to a document. If they both go in and try and edit it at the same time, it'll just let the other person know that someone is currently editing that document. They can choose to both edit it at the same time if they wanted to.
When we do workflows and PolicyStat, particularly the policy room in Visio, and when we embed them into the policy, my question is, do we have to, every time we want to amend the workflow process now, do we have to push it back out to be approved, or can you amend it independently and just store it into the policy?
So the workflows themselves are created in the background of PolicyStat. So the workflows are done by the administrators that set up the site. So you wouldn't be creating your own workflows. You would be letting them know what the workflow should be, and they would set that up for you for your documents in the system.
You're talking about a workflow within the document itself. I'm talking about an individual attachment in Visio, utilizing Visio, and then attaching it into the policy. So it's a separate item.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that, yeah, you would make that an attachment in that case as a guide for whomever may be needing that information in there.
And if the attachment needs to be updated, does that force the policy to go through the approval process all over again, or can it be attached without going through approvals?
So for general staff members, if they're going to edit their document, and the attachment, they would need to send it through the approval process. However, the group of administrators with admin rights, you could potentially do an override for them and update that attachment if you wanted to.
Another question similar to what you just asked in regard to attachments. So for example, when we have our own competencies that are related to a skill, we would force the Neil system to use an index with that attachment as a Word document, or does it have to be in a particular format to be able to be applied to the policy?
Yeah, no, it can be in any format, basically, can be attached to a document. So Word, or if you wanted to save it as a PDF, you could do that as well.
Any other questions before we let Joe go? Susan was wondering if you were going to show something else. Jim? Joe? Hello?
Pardon? Was there another topic?
Did you have anything else to show?
I did have just one item here. The user's account that I borrowed, they did not have any editing permissions applied to their account, meaning that they don't see a new policy button. So I wanted to show that very, very briefly here. So for example, and it's mainly just this button. So from an admin perspective, you may need to grant others editing rights in their department so that they will see this new policy button if you wanted to grant someone the ability to create a new policy. So for those of you that do have rights, you'd see this new policy button, and this is where you would be creating content within the system moving forward. So you could hit new policy, bring that up in here. You could go ahead and start creating new content. You can even copy and paste in and out of here if you've already started something, but you can go ahead and get that into the system here very quickly using that new policy button.
And Jen, that's what we're working on. Yeah. Hey, Joe,
Sounds good.
Something that we're working on, because the way it was in the letters, it was a little bit just the owner could do everything, and in PolicyStat, we need to accept the owner and the editor and the workflow. So once everybody gets in their own documents, we're going to have to change that a little bit. And that we do that.
Sounds good. All right, but that's all I had.
Okay, question. If we chose to do this, could we, let's say a new policy is written or a policy is changing in a major way, and we want to make sure all employees review and sort of attest that they've read the changes. Can we use PolicyStat in that manner?
Yes, you could. You could have that new policy. And for those with elevated permissions, you can assign what we call acknowledgements. They're basically attestations. And from that kind of level, you could assign staff members the responsibility to acknowledge that they've read and understood that new version of that document in the system.
One question in regard to notification. Do you actually have to go into the system to see what notices for one to be approved or reviewed, or is it linked to a notification in its inbox somehow to notify you that there's something awaiting?
The system will send out email notifications to you so that you do not need to necessarily log in to see if there's anything to complete.
Any other questions?
Joe, this is Susan. Sorry. I'm just making Jeff run. Right, the user group. When you were talking about the collaboration for the policy, you can also set up a user group. Correct? Am I right on that? So that, like, if you had all the program directors needed to approve the policy, you could set up a user group that's program directors that would automatically generate that.
That is correct. Yeah, if you wanted to have kind of a collaboration group ready to go, you could do that. However, those, again, to create a user group, same thing with acknowledgements, you would need an elevated level of permission to look at that. So if that's something you'd like to go over, I'd be happy to relay that to our team, and we can get you all set up there.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Thanks, Joe.
All righty. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Before,
Mm-hmm.